All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you're doing well on this Wednesday afternoon. We're going to do a Rashi. It's a short Rashi today, but a very beautiful one of my favorite Rashis. I'd love to share that with you on the fourth Aliyah here in Parshas Terumah. We're in the midst of discussing the Mishkan, discussed various kalim of the Mishkan, the Aron, the menorah, and then the building structure of the Mishkan itself, the rios, the curtains, the krashim, all the various components that they had to use in order to build the structure. So in the fourth Aliyah, we get to the krashim, the beams. For those of you familiar, I don't think you can see it quite in Debbie's picture, but in the way the Mishkan was constructed was a series of wooden beams that went into sockets in the ground, and then there were curtains that encompassed it, almost like a giant tent. If you take a look at our tents outside, if you replace those metal beams with wooden ones, it would be sort of similar, and the curtains come in between each of the beams. So in the fourth Aliyah, we learn about these beams. V'asisa es hakrashim laMishkan. You should make the krashim, the beams for the Mishkan. How are they made? Atzei shitim omdim, standing wood, acacia wood. Eser amos orach hakaresh, 10 amos tall. V'ama v'chetzi ha'ama rocha v'keresh ha'echad. And 1.5 amos wide, each one. Shtei yados lakeresh ha'echad. Each one had 2 prongs at the bottom. Mushulavos yishal achuta kein ta'aseh l'chol karshei mishkan. There's a way that they connected to each other. There were 20 krashim on each of the 2 of the sides, and arba'im adim yosef. There were 40 sockets in the ground to accept the 20 prongs, the prongs of the 20 krashim, etc. 2 adanim for every keresh. Again, 20 krashim for each side, 2 prongs coming out of each one, and therefore 40 sockets where they would come into, etc., etc. So the whole discussion of each of the sides and how many krashim and how many adanim. But the opening phrase here is what's interesting, as some of you might be familiar with. V'asisa es ha-krashim la-mishkan. You should make the krashim for the Mishkan. So Rashi comments and he says, Hayala lomar v'asisa krashim. It should have said, and you should make krashim generically. You should make posts. You should make beams for the Mishkan. Why should it say here, you should make the beams, as if they're talking about some specific beams? Commotion amar b'chol davar v'davar. Everything that's made, it also says v'asisa es, etc. V'asisa this, v'asisa this, v'asisa here. Just look at the previous pasuk. I'm sorry I didn't highlight some of the other examples, but just look at the previous pasukim. V'asisa chamishim lulaos. You should make 50 little connector loops. V'asisa karsei nechoshet chamishim. You should make these copper hooks. And Vasisa Michsela Ohel, you should make a covering for the Ohel. All of it is Vasisa, they all start Vasisa, and generically, you should make covers, you should make loops, you should make hooks, all of these things generically cited. So the next logical progression would have been Vasisa Krashim La Mishkan, you should make generically, make beams. Why Ha-Krashim, the beams, as if it's talking about some specific beam. Ma'u Ha-Krashim. So Rashi connects the fact that it's called ha-krashim, the krashim, and they're called krashim that are made from acacia wood, omdim, standing acacia wood. So he connects ha and omdim to tell us that it's not just saying generically create beams, but you should create beams from the wood that was already prepared ahead of time. What was the story of the prepared wood? Yaakov Avinu nata arazim b'Mitzrayim, ukshemeis tziva espanav lahalosin imayim kshiyatzu in Mitzrayim, shiati HaKadosh Baruch Hu litzavas eschem la'asos mishkan b'minmar me'atzei shitim, re'u shiyu mezumanim b'yadechem. These are the trees that Yaakov planted. Yaakov came down to Egypt. He planted trees there. And when he died, he commanded his children to take these trees along with them into the desert when they left Egypt, because he knew that one day HaKadosh Baruch Hu, sometime into their journey in the desert, would command them to build a Mishkan, and they would be required to have wood, and they would need the wood to be ready. You can't create wood in an instant. You have to let trees grow. There's no trees in the desert. So he wanted to prepare them for this moment of the Mishkan, and therefore he planted trees. It's one of my favorite Rashis because there's so much beautiful symbolism here. There's a lot of big ideas that come out of this Rashi. Number one, you have to think even one step earlier than the story cited here in Rashi. How did Yaakov Avinu get the trees to plant in Egypt? And that's yet another medrash, which says that he took the trees on his way out of Israel. He took the trees that Avram Avinu had planted. He took those trees with him when he went down to Mitzrayim, replanted them there, and then had the Jewish people take them on their way out. There's a beautiful idea here about the chain of tradition and the symbolism of a tree being something of longevity and something of growth, and connected to the whole idea of Torah being Eitz Chaim here. So many layers to the meaning here of the symbolism, both in terms of the intergenerational piece, Avram to Yaakov to the future descendants. There's so much beauty in terms of that. There's so much symbolism in terms of the wood being idea of growth and the idea that you can uproot something and replant it. It's connected to the whole idea of Golus and Geula, which is really what we're reading here about in this story. It's also, of course, connected to the whole idea of Yaakov having his imprint on the future home of the Jewish people, because he is one of the three avos that's connected most to the symbolism of bayis, of home. He's the Ishtam Yoshev Ohalim. He's the person who dwells in a tent, and now he puts his imprint on the tent, the ultimate tent of the Jewish people, where the Shekhinah is going to rest. There's so many different interesting things over here, but most importantly, in the direct link to our story over here, I think it's important to understand that this was a highlight moment. The building of the Mishkan here is a highlight moment. It's not a happenstance occurrence. It's not just something that comes along and says, okay, yeah, now you're in the desert, you need a place, so let's build a Mishkan. No, this was something pre-designated. It was something that was foreshadowed. It was something of great importance that the Jewish people had to prepare for, that Yaakov had to prepare for. It was this ultimate moment we were coming to. It's connected to the Machlokas, Rashi and the Ramban, about why we have a Mishkan. Is it just the antidote to the Chet HaEgel, or is it something more lofty? But you have to filter it through each of those opinions. But no matter which opinion you take, there's certainly a strand of thinking in Chazal that dates the preparation for the Mishkan all the way back to Yaakov Avinu in Egypt, in the midst of pre-slavery time, which means that it's something that's part of the DNA of the Jewish people, part of something important to prepare for and to expect, and something ultimately that will shape the experience of the Jewish people, not just in the desert, but going forward all the way until today, as we continue to build our Mishkans, our Mikdash Ma'at, which are connected back to the Mikdash, which is connected back to the Mishkan, which is connected back to Yaakov, which is connected back to Avram, which is a whole chain of intergenerational worship in various kinds of places. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you, Rabbi. Have a good day.
You too.